My brother Robert came to visit me from Chicago and found my house completely empty, void of furniture, no food for dinner, absolutely nothing. He looked at me, eyes welling with tears, and asked, "Sis, why are you going hungry when you have a pension of $8,000 a month?" Before I could answer, Michael came out of his bedroom, crossed his arms, and declared with a proud smirk, "I give all her money to my wife. She manages it better than Mom." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert stood motionless, staring at my son as if he were a stranger. Then, very slowly, he took off his coat, folded it calmly, and what he did next left Michael completely paralyzed. But to understand how we arrived at that moment, I must tell you my story from the beginning. My name is Margaret, and I am 69 years old. All my life, I worked as a registered nurse at the city's general hospital. It was 42 years of night shifts, emergencies that stole my sleep, and patients weeping in my arms. 42 years of dedicating my life to saving others. My husband, Richard, died 11 years ago from a massive heart attack. It was so sudden there was no time for goodbyes. That morning, before leaving for work, he kissed my forehead and said, "I love you, Maggie." I never imagined those would be his last words. The pain of losing him was so deep I thought I wouldn't survive, but I had a reason to keep going. Michael, our only son. He became the center of my universe. Everything I did, every overtime hour I worked, every sacrifice I made, was for him so he could have a good education, lack nothing, and fulfill his dreams. Michael grew up to be a cheerful and affectionate boy. I remember when he was 8 years old, waiting up for me after my night shifts just to give me a hug. "Mommy, you're the best nurse in the world," he would say with that sweet voice that melted my heart. I saw him graduate from university with honors. He studied business administration, and I was so proud of him. I attended his graduation ceremony still wearing my hospital scrubs because I came straight from one 8-hour shift, but I didn't care. Seeing my son receive that diploma was my greatest reward. Afterward, he landed a good job at a logistics firm. Everything seemed perfect. My son was a successful, responsible man with a bright future, or so I thought. 3 years ago, Michael met Jessica at a business conference. She worked in the marketing department of a competitor. She was an elegant woman, always impeccably dressed, with the kind of confidence that commands respect. When Michael introduced me to her, I noticed something in her eyes I couldn't decipher at the moment, a calculating coldness behind her perfect smile. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Sullivan," she said with a soft voice while extending her hand. "Michael has told me so much about you." She was wearing an ivory dress that probably cost more than my monthly nurse's salary. I tried to be kind, to give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, she was the woman who had won my son's heart. They married 6 months later in a small but elegant ceremony. I paid for half the wedding with my savings because I wanted Michael to have the special day he deserved. Jessica had no close family. She said her parents had passed away, and she was an only child. That made me feel sorry for her. I thought perhaps her coldness was just a shell to protect herself from loneliness. I tried to get close, to be the mother she never had. The first few months seemed happy. Michael visited me every week, sometimes bringing Jessica. We shared Sunday lunch, and he would tell me about his work, his plans, his dreams. "Mom, I'm going to give you grandkids soon," he promised one afternoon while helping me wash the dishes. "And you'll be the most spoiling grandma in the world." My heart filled with hope. Life was moving forward, and I had so much to live for. But then, 14 months ago, everything changed. Michael lost his job. The company he worked for shut down operations in our city and relocated everything to another region. He arrived at my house that afternoon with a broken expression, eyes red from crying. "Mom, they laid me off," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know what I'm going to do. I have debt, the rent on the apartment, Jessica's expenses." I hugged him like I did when he was a child and said, "It's okay, sweetheart, I'm here. We're going to get through this together." And that was how my ordeal began, though at that moment, I called it a mother's love. Michael and Jessica moved into my house 2 weeks after he lost his job. "It'll only be temporary, Mom," Michael assured me as they brought in their suitcases. "Just until I find another job and we can stabilize." I was happy to help them. After all, what was the point of my $8,000 monthly income, a combination of Social Security and my generous hospital pension, if not to support my son in difficult times? My house had 3 bedrooms, so there was plenty of space. I gave them the master suite, the one that had been mine and Richard's. I moved into the smallest guest room. "You two are young and need space," I told them with a smile. Jessica thanked me with a kiss on the cheek, but there was something about the gesture that felt hollow, mechanical, as if she were performing for an invisible audience. The first few days were pleasant. We cooked together. I taught Jessica some traditional recipes that Michael had loved since childhood. She seemed interested, took notes, asked questions. "Mrs. Sullivan, you are so generous," she said while stirring the pot. "Not just any mother would do what you're doing for your son." Those words filled me with pride. I thought we were finally building a mother-daughter relationship, but there were small details that began to make me uncomfortable. Jessica would go through the kitchen cabinets and make comments about what was missing. "We should buy new dinnerware. This is very old," she'd say, pointing at the plates Richard had given me for our 10th anniversary. Or she would enter my room without knocking, claiming she needed something from the closet that they had mistakenly left there. Michael spent his days sending out resumes and going to interviews. I gave him cash for gas, for a nice suit, so he could pay for a coffee while he waited. "Thanks, Mom," he would say, taking the bills. "I promise I'm going to pay you back everything when I find a job." Weeks passed, and the interviews yielded no results. Michael's frustration was evident. He came home quieter each day, more distant. Jessica became the spokesperson for both of them. "Mrs. Sullivan, Michael is very stressed," she explained softly. "The constant rejection is affecting him emotionally. He needs to feel that he can still provide for his family." Then she suggested something that seemed reasonable at the time. "Why don't you give Michael your debit card? That way he can handle the household expenses and feel useful while he looks for work." I hesitated for a moment. It was my money, my pension earned over 42 years of labor, but I looked at my son sitting on the sofa with a lost gaze, and my heart broke. I wanted to help him recover his dignity. "Okay," I said. "Michael can manage the money while he's here." I gave him my card and explained my PIN. "Use what you need, son, for food, for your expenses, for whatever." Michael hugged me tight, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a smile on his face. "Thanks, Mom. You don't know what this means to me." Jessica smiled too, but her smile was different. There was a glint in her eyes I didn't know how to interpret. Now I know it was the glint of victory. For the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. Michael went to the supermarket and brought back groceries. He paid the utility bills on time. He even gave me $100 for my personal expenses. "Here, Mom, buy yourself something nice," he said affectionately. I felt relieved. My son was responsible. He was handling the money well. But then, subtle changes began. The grocery hauls started getting smaller. "Everything is so expensive, Mom," Michael explained. "We have to economize until I get a job." It made sense, so I didn't question it. We stopped buying fresh meat and fish. Fruits disappeared from the pantry. "Canned vegetables are cheaper and last longer," Jessica said while preparing dinner. I nodded, trying to be understanding of the situation. But something strange was happening. While we ate beans and rice, Jessica always had bags from expensive stores in her room. One day I saw her trying on an emerald-colored dress that surely cost several $100s. "A friend gave it to me," she said quickly when she noticed me looking. It didn't fit her anymore, and she knew it was my size. Michael also started wearing new clothes, shoes that shined, brand-name shirts, a watch I didn't remember seeing before. "A buddy lent them to me for interviews," he explained when I asked. "You have to look the part to get the job." Their explanations always sounded logical, reasonable. I wanted to believe them. I needed to believe them. 3 months passed, and Michael still hadn't found a job. One day I tried to check my bank account online to see how much money was left, but the password had been changed. "Michael," I called him with concern. "I can't get into my bank account." He came into the living room with a calm expression. "Oh, yeah, Mom. I changed the password for security. There's a lot of fraud going on right now." He gave me a new password, but when I tried to use it, it didn't work either. "Let me do it, Mom," he said, taking my phone from my hands. "You don't understand this tech stuff very well. I'll handle it." And just like that, slowly, I lost access to my own money, to my own life. Every day was a little worse than the one before, but the changes were so gradual that I didn't realize how deep I had fallen until it was too late. Michael and Jessica had completely appropriated my house, my money, my life, and I, like a fool, kept justifying every one of their actions because they were my family, because Michael was my son, because a mother's love knows no bounds, right? But I was about to discover that there are loves that destroy you while you smile and say thank you. One day I arrived in the living room and noticed the sofa was missing, the beautiful burgundy velvet sofa Richard and I had bought for our 20th anniversary. "Where is the sofa?" I asked, confused. Jessica was painting her nails at the dining table. She didn't even look up. "We sold it," she replied naturally. "It was very old and worn out. Besides, we needed the money for more important things." My heart raced. More important things? What things? Michael appeared from the kitchen with a beer in his hand. "Mom, don't worry about those details. I'm taking care of everything." "But I am worried. That sofa had memories, history, meaning. Michael, that sofa belonged to your father and me. You had no right to sell it without consulting me." My son looked at me with an expression I had never seen on him before. Cold. Distant. "Mom, you're living in the past. It's just material stuff. Dad is gone, and clinging to old furniture isn't going to bring him back." His words hurt more than a slap in the face. I tried to protest, but Jessica intervened with a honeyed voice. "Mrs. Sullivan, Michael is right. You need to let go of the past and think about the future. Besides, we live here too, and we have a right to make decisions about the home." Right? In my own house? I wanted to scream at them that it was my house, my money, my memories. But the words got stuck in my throat. I was afraid that if I confronted them, they would leave and abandon me completely alone. And loneliness terrified me more than anything in the world. So I swallowed my tears, nodded, and went to my room feeling like a stranger in my own home. The next week, the dining room table disappeared. Then the antique lamps I had inherited from my mother. Then the television in the living room. Although strangely, they had a new giant flat screen in their bedroom. "I got it on a Black Friday deal," Michael explained when I asked. Every time I objected to something, the answer was the same. "Mom, trust me. I know what I'm doing." But I didn't trust him anymore. I started having nightmares where my house was completely empty, and I walked through rooms that echoed with every step. The worst part is that those nightmares were becoming reality. My diet also worsened drastically. The food portions became smaller and smaller. "Mom, at your age you don't need to eat so much," Jessica would tell me while serving me barely half a cup of rice and a few watery beans. "Besides, didn't you want to lose weight? I'm doing you a favor." I didn't want to lose weight. I was at a healthy weight for my age and build. But Michael supported his wife in everything. Jessica took an online nutrition course, he informed me with pride. "She knows what's best for you." She hadn't studied nutrition. I would discover that later. It was just another lie in a growing mountain of lies. While I ate rice and beans once a day, they ordered delivery almost every night. The aroma of pizza, burgers, and Chinese food filled the house and made my stomach ache with hunger. "We're younger and need more energy," Jessica explained without a trace of shame on her face. I began to lose weight rapidly. My clothes hung loosely on me. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the gaunt woman staring back. I had deep, dark circles, pale skin, shaking hands. My friends from the hospital, the few who still visited, were worried. "Maggie, are you sick?" Stella, my best friend of 30 years, asked me. "You look very thin. Are you eating well?" I opened my mouth to tell her the truth, to ask for help, but at that moment Jessica entered the room with a radiant smile. "Mrs. Sullivan is perfectly fine. She's just on a healthy diet, right, mother-in-law?" She looked at me with eyes that promised consequences if I said anything different. I nodded weakly. "Yes, I'm fine, just taking care of myself a little." Stella didn't seem convinced, but she didn't insist. When she left, I felt lonelier than ever. One day I tried to withdraw money from the ATM with the emergency card Michael had returned to me. I needed to buy my blood pressure medication. The machine rejected the transaction. Insufficient funds. Impossible. It was the middle of the month. There should be at least $4,000 in the account. I tried again. Same message. With shaking hands, I requested a printed balance. The figure on the paper left me breathless. $37.50. $37 out of an $8,000 monthly income. Where was the rest? I arrived home with the crumpled paper in my hand and looked for Michael. He was on the patio talking on the phone, laughing at something. When he saw me, he cut the call quickly. "Michael, I need to talk to you," I said with a trembling voice, showing him the bank slip. "There is only $37 left in my account. Where is my money?" His expression changed from surprise to annoyance in a second. "Mom, you went to the bank without telling me? We already talked about this. I handle the money so you don't worry. But I need to know where it is. It's $8,000, and there's only $37 left. What was it all spent on?" Michael sighed as if dealing with a spoiled child. "Food, bills, household expenses. Do you think everything is free? Electricity, water, gas, internet, everything costs money, Mom. But that couldn't cost almost $8,000. The utility bills totaled a maximum of $500 a month, and the other $7,500? Michael, the bills don't add up to more than $500, I insisted, trying to stay calm though my heart was pounding. Where is the other $7,500? My son looked at me with a look of annoyance that froze my blood. "Mom, there's also food to pay for, gas to get to interviews, clothes to look presentable. Or do you want me to go look for a job in rags?" His tone was defensive, almost aggressive. He had never spoken to me like that. "But son, I'm not seeing that food. We barely have rice and beans in the house, and you've been here 6 months without getting a job. Don't you think it's time we look for another solution?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I saw Michael's face darken. Jessica appeared at that moment as if she had been listening behind the door. "Another solution?" Jessica repeated with a dangerously soft voice. "What are you insinuating, Mrs. Sullivan? That you want to kick us out on the street? Your own son?" Her words sounded hurt, but her eyes shined with something darker. Malice. Calculation. "No, that's not it," I rushed to explain. "I just want to understand what is happening with my money. I have a right to know." Michael took a step toward me. "You have a right," he said slowly, "but you also have an obligation to help your family. Or are we not your family anymore? After everything I did for you? After taking care of you when Dad died? Now you're going to deny me your support?" His argument was absurd. He hadn't taken care of me when Richard died. I had been the one who took care of myself, who worked double shifts to not think about the pain, who kept going because I had to be strong. But I said nothing. I stood there, holding that bank paper like evidence in a trial where I was the accused. "Michael is right," Jessica added, approaching her husband and taking his arm. "You are being selfish, Mrs. Sullivan. We are going through a difficult time, and instead of supporting us, you are questioning us. Do you know what that does to Michael? You are hurting him emotionally." The word selfish resonated in my head like a bell. Me? Selfish? Me, who had given my entire life to my son, who paid for his college, who supported him in every decision, who opened my house and gave him total access to my money. I was the selfish one? Tears began to roll down my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to. I'm just confused." Michael sighed and patted me on the shoulder, like one consoles a dog. "It's okay, Mom. I know you're old and it's hard for you to understand how things work now. That's why it's better that I take care of everything. You just rest and don't worry about the money." I went to my room feeling small, ashamed, guilty. They had made me feel like I was the problem. The following weeks were even worse. I realized I no longer had control over anything in my own life. I couldn't access my bank account. I couldn't even buy a pack of crackers without asking permission. Michael controlled every penny. One day, I asked him for $20 to buy a birthday gift for Stella. $20? He repeated as if I had asked for a fortune. "Mom, we don't have money for unnecessary expenses. Stella will understand." But it wasn't unnecessary to me. Stella had been my friend for 30 years. She had been by my side when Richard died. She deserved at least a birthday gift. "Please, Michael, just $20. My son looked at me with that expression of fed-up exhaustion that was becoming frequent. "No, Mom, and don't insist because you're stressing me out. Do you know how hard it is for me to be unemployed, and on top of that, I have to deal with your whims?" I stopped seeing my friends, not because I didn't want to, but because I was ashamed for them to see me like this thin, gaunt, without a penny in my pocket. What was I going to tell them? That my own son had taken everything from me? When Stella called, I invented excuses. "I'm tired. I don't feel well." Another time. Eventually, she stopped calling as much. I was isolating myself from the world, and I didn't even realize that was exactly what Michael and Jessica wanted. A victim without witnesses is easier to control. The house became emptier. The framed photographs disappeared from the walls. I sold them on an app, Jessica explained. Vintage frames are in style, and they paid well. They were photos of my wedding, Michael's baptism, family Christmases, irreplaceable memories reduced to cash I never saw. They took the Persian rugs I had inherited from my grandmother. They were full of dust mites, was the excuse. The paintings Richard had painted as a hobby took up too much space. Every object that disappeared took with it a piece of my history, my identity. I was being erased from my own life. One object at a time. My health deteriorated visibly. In addition to the weight loss, I began to have constant dizziness. My blood pressure medication had run out weeks ago, and I didn't have money to buy more. "Michael, I need to go to the doctor," I told him one morning, after nearly fainting in the bathroom. "I feel very weak." My son didn't even look up from his cell phone. "Doctors are very expensive, Mom. Besides, you're a nurse. You can take care of yourself." It was twisted logic. Yes, I was a nurse, but I was retired and sick. I needed professional medical attention. "But my medication," I tried to explain. "I already told you there is no money for that," he cut me off with a final tone. "Learn to manage yourself better." Manage myself? I didn't have access to a single cent. How was I going to manage what I didn't have? One night I woke up with my stomach twisting from hunger. I hadn't eaten anything all day except a bit of stale bread in the morning. I got up and went to the kitchen hoping to find something, anything. The pantry was practically empty. There was only a can of tuna and a package of crackers. I took the can with trembling hands and looked for the can opener. I was about to open it when I heard Jessica's voice behind me. "What are you doing?" I was so startled I almost dropped the can. "I'm hungry," I said with a barely audible voice. Jessica snatched the can from my hands. "This is for Michael's lunch tomorrow. He needs protein to stay strong during interviews. You already ate dinner." But I hadn't eaten dinner. They had ordered Chinese food and hadn't offered me anything. I stood there watching as Jessica put the can in a high cabinet I couldn't reach, and I felt like a prisoner in my own house, because that was exactly what I was. A prisoner. The days turned into a fog of hunger, weakness, and despair. I lost track of time. How long had Michael and Jessica been living with me? 6 months? 8? A year? I didn't know. Everything mixed together in my mind, confused by malnutrition. The only thing I knew for certain was that I was losing the will to fight. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just a useless old woman who didn't understand how the modern world worked. Maybe I deserved this. Those dark thoughts took over me more frequently. I was giving up on myself, but then something happened that would change everything. My brother Robert decided to pay me a surprise visit from Chicago. Robert and I had always been close despite the distance. He had moved to Chicago 15 years ago for work and built his life there, but we always kept in touch. We spoke on the phone at least once a month, although I must admit that in recent months I had avoided his calls. I didn't want him to hear my weak voice, to ask me questions I didn't know how to answer. When I didn't pick up, he left messages. "Sis, are you okay? You have me worried. Call me." But I never returned the calls. Michael was always nearby listening, controlling. I didn't dare say anything that might upset him. Robert tried to communicate with Michael directly. "Your uncle is asking for you," my son would tell me with a bored tone after hanging up. I told him, "You're fine, just busy." But Robert wasn't stupid. My younger brother, 5 years my junior, had always been sharp. He worked as a forensic accountant for a major firm and had that ability to detect when numbers didn't add up. And something in this whole situation wasn't adding up. After 2 months of not being able to speak with me directly, Robert made a decision without telling anyone. He bought a plane ticket and came to visit. When he knocked on the door that Thursday afternoon, I was lying in my room, too weak to get up. Michael opened the door and found him standing there with a small suitcase and a determined expression. "Uncle Rob?" I heard Michael's surprised voice from the living room. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my sister," Robert replied with a firm voice. "Is she home?" There was an awkward silence. I wanted to get up, go greet him, but my body wouldn't respond. I had spent 3 days eating practically nothing, and the dizziness was constant. "Yeah, she's here, but she's resting," Michael said. "She's been a little delicate lately." Then perfect. I came at the right time, Robert replied, and I heard his footsteps entering the house. Wait, Uncle Michael tried to stop him, but my brother was already walking down the hallway, opening doors. When he opened the door to my room and saw me, his face transformed completely. I saw the shock, the horror, the disbelief in his eyes. Margaret, he whispered, as if he couldn't believe the skeletal woman lying in that bed was his sister. I sat up with difficulty. Robert. I tried to smile. What a surprise, but my voice came out broken, barely a whisper. My brother entered the room and knelt beside my bed. He took my hand, and I could see his eyes filling with tears as he felt how thin I was, how fragile my bones were under my skin. My God, sis, what happened to you? He asked with a trembling voice. You're malnourished, you look. He didn't finish the sentence, but we both knew what he was going to say. I looked like a terminal patient, like someone on the brink of death. I'm fine, I lied by reflex. Just been a little sick. Robert shook his head slowly, not letting go of my hand. No, Margaret, this isn't a little sick. This is serious, very serious. He stood up and left the room. I followed him with my gaze, feeling a mixture of relief and terror. Robert had come. Someone had finally come. My brother walked through the house, and I could hear his footsteps, his stifled exclamations of surprise. When he returned to my room, his expression was one of complete disbelief. Margaret, where is your furniture? Your house is practically empty. There's no sofa in the living room, no table in the dining room. The walls are bare. What happened here? Michael appeared in the doorway with Jessica glued to his side. Uncle, we're in a renovation process, he explained with a soft voice, that voice he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. We sold some old furniture to buy more modern things later. Robert turned to him with a look I had never seen on him. Renovation? Your mother is lying on a mattress with no sheets in a room without heating, and you call this renovation? Indeed, my bed only had a mattress with a thin blanket. I didn't even have a pillow. I had been sleeping with a rolled-up towel under my head. Uncle, you're exaggerating, Michael said, but his voice sounded less sure. Robert ignored him. He turned to me. Sis, when was the last time you ate? The question took me by surprise. This morning, I lied, but Robert knew me too well. He walked to the kitchen, and I heard him open the pantry, the refrigerator. He returned with a face red from contained rage. There is no food in this house, Margaret. Absolutely nothing, just a can of tuna and a pack of expired crackers. How have you been eating? I couldn't answer. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Robert knelt beside me again and with a very soft voice, as if talking to someone wounded, asked, Sister, why are you going hungry? You have a pension of $8,000 a month. You should be living comfortably. Where is your money? Before I could answer, Michael stepped forward from the doorway. He must have been listening to the whole conversation. He crossed his arms and, with an expression mixing pride and defiance, declared loud and clear, I give all her money to my wife. She manages it better than Mom. Mom is old and doesn't understand modern finances. Jessica has an investment plan to grow that money. It's for everyone's good. The silence that followed was absolute. Robert stood completely still, looking at Michael as if he had just confessed to a murder. I felt as if cold water had been thrown over me. My son had proudly admitted he was taking all my money. Jessica appeared next to Michael, taking his arm with a satisfied expression. It's true, Rob. I am investing Mrs. Sullivan's money intelligently. She gave it to us voluntarily for us to manage. Robert stood up very slowly. I saw his jaw tense, his hands close into fists, but when he spoke, his voice was dangerously calm. So you give all her money to your wife, he repeated, looking Michael directly in the eyes. And your mother is here dying of hunger in her own house, while you and your wife keep her entire pension. That's not how it sounds, Uncle, Michael started to say, but Robert raised a hand to silence him. Shut up. I don't want to hear your excuses. He turned to Jessica, and you say you're investing my sister's money. In what, exactly? Because from what I see, it's not in food, it's not in medication, it's not in keeping this house in livable conditions. Jessica opened her mouth to answer, but Robert continued. In fact, I want to see those supposed investments. I want to see bank statements, documents, proof of where every penny of the $8,000 monthly my sister receives is, and I want to see them now. Michael and Jessica exchanged a quick look, And in that moment, I knew the truth. There were no investments, there was no financial plan, there was only theft, abuse, and manipulation. My brother knew it too. I saw his expression shift from controlled anger to something much colder and calculated. Robert took off his coat very slowly, folded it carefully, and placed it on the foot of my bed. Then he took his cell phone out of his pocket and dialed a number. "Henry," he said when someone answered, "it's Rob. I need you to come immediately to my sister Margaret's house. Bring your recorder and your camera. And if you can, bring Dr. Evans too." Henry Mitchell was our family lawyer for years, a serious, meticulous man who had handled our parents' will and some legal matters for Robert and me. I saw Michael turn pale. "Uncle, what are you doing?" he asked with a high-pitched voice. "This is a private family matter." Robert ended the call and turned to Michael with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're right, Michael. It is a family matter, a very serious family matter called elder financial abuse. And when Henry gets here, we are going to document every penny you have stolen, every piece of furniture you have sold, every meal you denied your mother. Everything." The words "stolen" hung in the air like an indictment. Michael tried to protest, Jessica tried to explain, but Robert wasn't listening to them anymore. He sat on the edge of my bed and took my hand. "Sis," he said softly, "this is over. Today, it all ends." Michael began to pace back and forth in the room, running his hands through his hair nervously. "Uncle Rob, I think you're misunderstanding the whole situation," he said with a trembling voice. "Mom gave us permission to manage her money. She wanted to help us. Tell him, Mom. Tell him you agreed with everything." All eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of that moment, the importance of what I was about to say. For months I had justified, I had forgiven, I had stayed silent. But as I looked into the pleading eyes of my son and then the firm, loving eyes of my brother, something broke inside me, something I had been holding back for too long. "I gave you my card for temporary expenses," I said with a weak but clear voice. "I didn't give you permission to empty my account every month. I didn't give you permission to sell my furniture. I didn't give you permission to let me starve in my own house." The words came out like a torrent I could no longer stop. "I gave you my card because you were my son and you were in trouble. Because I trusted you. Because I never imagined you would do this to me." My voice cracked, but I continued. "I changed my entire life for you, Michael. I worked double shifts to pay for your college. I gave up having a social life to be with you when you were a child. I gave you everything I had, everything I was. And you paid me back by stealing my dignity." Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. Jessica stepped forward. "Mrs. Sullivan, you are confused. Age sometimes makes us remember things incorrectly." But Robert interrupted her with a cutting voice. "Don't try to call her senile. My sister is perfectly lucid, and you just heard her testimony." Robert stood up and walked toward Michael. "While we wait for Henry, let's do a little exercise. You say Jessica is investing your mother's money. Fine. Show me. Open your phone and show me the investment apps, the statements, the certificates, whatever." Michael took a step back. "I don't have to show you anything. You're not the police." "You're right. I'm not the police," Robert replied with a chilling calm. "But they will be here soon if you don't cooperate. Because what you have done to your mother isn't just immoral, it's illegal. It's called financial exploitation of the elderly, and it is a federal crime with penalties of up to 10 years in prison." I saw the color drain completely from Michael's face. Jessica, on the other hand, maintained her composure, although I could see a glint of panic in her eyes. "This is ridiculous," Jessica said tightly. "We haven't committed any crime. Michael is Mrs. Sullivan's son. Children have a right to receive help from their parents." "Help, yes," Robert replied. "Theft, no. And there is a very clear difference between asking for help and appropriating every cent your mother-in-law receives while leaving her without food and without medication." He turned to me. "Sis, when was the last time you took your blood pressure meds?" "Almost 2 months ago," I admitted. "Michael said there was no money to buy them." Robert closed his eyes for a moment, as if containing an explosion of fury. "There was no money for medications that cost $30 a month with insurance copay, but there was money for—" He looked around the empty room. "For what exactly? Where is the money, Michael?" My son slid down the wall to the floor, covering his face with his hands. "We spent it," he murmured. "You spent it?" Robert repeated. $8,000 a month for. How many months, Margaret? 14 months, I answered. They've lived here 14 months. Robert took out his phone and quickly did the math. $112,000. You blew through $112,000 of your mother's money in 14 months. On what? Michael didn't answer. It was Jessica who spoke, and for the first time since I met her, her voice sounded genuinely scared. We had expenses. The rent on the apartment we still had the first year, credit card debt, the car. What apartment? Robert asked. Michael and Jessica live here. We were still paying the lease on the old apartment, Jessica explained quickly. We moved before the lease ended and had to keep paying until it expired. Robert looked at her with disbelief. And it didn't occur to you to sublet? To find someone to take over the lease? Or was it simply more convenient to use my sister's money to pay for 2 homes while she slept on a mattress without sheets? Jessica had no answer for that. Credit card debts, Robert continued. How much are we talking? $20,000, Michael murmured from the floor. $20,000, Robert repeated. And how did you accumulate $20,000 in debt? The silence was the answer. But I knew the answer. I had seen it with my own eyes during these months. The expensive clothes they wore, the leftovers from upscale restaurants, Michael's new watch shining on his wrist, the designer handbags Jessica collected, the weekend trips they took while I stayed alone at home. All that had been with my money. The doorbell rang, and Robert went to open it. Henry entered with his professional briefcase and a serious expression. He was a man in his 50s, gray-haired, with glasses and that calm but authoritative presence good lawyers have. Behind him came a woman I didn't recognize, carrying a medical bag. Margaret, Henry said, approaching my bed with evident concern. Robert explained a bit over the phone, but, my God. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. My appearance spoke for itself. The doctor, who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Evans, approached and began to examine me. She took my blood pressure, listened to my heart, checked my eyes and mouth. Her expression grew graver with every second. Mrs. Sullivan, you are severely malnourished, she said with a professional but worried voice. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. You have signs of dehydration, and your BMI indicates severe malnutrition. You need immediate medical attention. Did you hear that? Robert said, looking at Michael and Jessica. Severe malnutrition in a house where $8,000 a month comes in. Henry took a recorder out of his briefcase. With your permission, Margaret, I am going to record this conversation. It is important to document everything that has happened. I nodded weakly. Henry turned on the recorder and began. It is Thursday, February 22nd, 4:30 p.m. Present at the residence of Mrs. Margaret Sullivan are Mrs. Sullivan, her brother Robert, her son Michael, daughter-in-law Jessica, attorney Henry Mitchell, and Dr. Sarah Evans. He looked at Michael and Jessica. I am going to ask you some questions, and I strongly recommend you answer honestly. Everything you say is being recorded and can be used in future legal proceedings. Michael stood up, trembling. We didn't do anything wrong. My mother gave us her money voluntarily. Voluntarily? Henry asked with a skeptical tone. Did you ask your mother if she agreed to go without food, without medication, without furniture? She could ask for what she needed. Jessica intervened defensively. It's not our fault if she didn't ask. Didn't ask? Robert's voice sounded like thunder. My sister asked you for $20 to buy a birthday gift for her best friend, and Michael denied it. She asked for money for her medication, and you denied it. How dare you say she didn't ask? Henry raised a hand to calm the room. Michael, Jessica, I need you to hand over all bank statements for the last 14 months. I need to see exactly where every cent of the $112,000 you received from Margaret's pension went. We don't have to give you anything, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. Technically, no, Henry admitted. But if you don't cooperate voluntarily, I will file a formal complaint with the district attorney's office tonight for elder financial abuse, misappropriation, and possibly fraud. And then it will be federal investigators going through your accounts with a warrant, and I assure you, they are much less polite than I am. I saw Michael and Jessica look at each other, communicating silently. Finally, Jessica sighed. Okay, we'll show you the statements. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened an app. Robert and Henry leaned in to look at the screen. What they saw left them silent for a long moment. Then Robert whispered, "My God." "What?" I asked weakly. "What did you see?" Robert turned to me with an expression of absolute disbelief. "Sis, there are transfers from your account to a business account in the name of Jessica Mendez Enterprises, LLC. A business account? She opened a business with your money." Robert's words fell on me like stones. A business. Jessica had opened a business with my money, my pension, earned with 42 years of work as a nurse, endless night shifts, patients I had cared for with my own hands. All that sacrifice had been used to fund the business of the woman who was starving me. "What kind of business?" Henry asked with a controlled voice while taking notes on a pad. Jessica didn't answer. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor. Her previous confidence had completely vanished. It was Michael who spoke with a barely audible voice. "A clothing boutique. Jessica always wanted to have her own store." "A boutique," Robert repeated slowly, as if processing something incomprehensible. "You left your mother without food, without medicine, without furniture, selling her family heirlooms so your wife could fulfill her dream of having a clothing store?" "It wasn't like that," Jessica protested, looking up for the first time with eyes shining with tears. "I was going to pay back all the money when the business started generating profits. It was a temporary investment." "An investment," Henry's voice was dangerously soft. "Did you ask Mrs. Sullivan for permission to invest her entire pension in your personal business?" Jessica shook her head. "Michael said she would be okay with it, that she would understand." "Michael said," Henry repeated, writing meticulously. "But you never directly asked Margaret if you could use her money to open a business in your name?" "No," Jessica admitted with a broken voice. Henry turned to Michael. "And you told your mother that you were using her full pension to finance your wife's business?" Michael didn't answer. His silence was all the answer we needed. Robert began to review more details on Jessica's phone, scrolling through the screen with an increasingly dark expression. "Here is a transfer of $3,000 for initial inventory, another of $2,500 for shop renovation, $1,500 for logo and brand design, $4,000 for imported merchandise." With every figure he mentioned, I felt like needles were being driven into my heart. "And here," Robert continued, "are personal purchases: a dress for $400, shoes for $600, a handbag for $1,200, dinners at restaurants costing $200, $300 a night." He turned to Jessica with a look of absolute contempt. "While my sister ate watery beans once a day, you were spending $1,200 on a handbag?" Jessica began to cry openly. "I needed to look the part for the business. Clients judge by appearances. If I didn't look successful, no one was going to buy from my shop." "And my mother?" I asked with a voice I barely recognized as mine, a voice full of pain so deep it seemed to come from the center of the earth. "She didn't need to look good. She didn't need to eat. She didn't need her medicine." Jessica couldn't look me in the eyes. I thought, "Michael said you had savings, that you had other accounts." I laughed. It was a bitter, broken laugh that hurt my chest. Other savings? Where would I have other savings? "I spent all my savings on Michael's college, on his wedding, on helping you when you needed it. My pension was all I had, and you knew it." Henry continued reviewing the phone, now with a tablet where he was doing calculations. "According to what I'm seeing here, of the $112,000 that entered this house in 14 months, approximately $93,000 was transferred directly to Jessica's accounts for her business and personal expenses." $93,000. The figure was so large I couldn't process it. "And the other $19,000? Robert asked. Michael cleared his throat. "We paid the old apartment for 6 months until the lease ended. That was about $1,500 a month. $9,000 total. Then there are the credit card debts we had before moving here. We were paying them off little by little with my sister's money, while she starved." Robert's voice trembled with contained rage. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" Dr. Evans, who had been rechecking my vitals, intervened. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to take Margaret to the hospital immediately. Her condition is critical. She needs IV fluids, supervised nutrition, and a full evaluation. If she doesn't receive urgent medical care, she could suffer a collapse." "No," I said with a firm voice despite my weakness. All eyes turned to me. "I am not going to the hospital until this is resolved. I need to hear it all. I need to know the whole truth." Robert knelt beside my bed and took my hand. "Sis, you're very sick." "I know," I replied, "but I've been sick for months and survived. I can hold on a few more hours. I need to know what else they hid from me." My brother looked at Dr. Evans, who nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but no more than an hour." After that, I insist on taking her to the hospital, with or without permission. Henry took more documents out of his briefcase. "Michael, Jessica, I need you to sign a sworn affidavit where you admit to having received Margaret's pension money and how you spent it. This declaration will be used to determine the next legal steps." "And if we don't sign?" Michael asked with a last attempt at defiance. "Then I proceed immediately with the criminal complaint," Henry replied without any emotion. "And believe me, you will want to resolve this in civil court before it becomes a criminal case. Elder financial abuse is a felony. We are talking about prison time, not fines." I saw the color disappear from Michael's face. Jessica was sobbing uncontrollably. "We didn't mean to hurt her," she cried. "We just wanted to get ahead. We just wanted a chance." "At the cost of my sister?" Robert asked with a hard voice. "That was your chance? Starving a 9-year-old woman?" "Enough," I said with more strength than I thought I had. "I want to ask questions." Everyone fell silent and looked at me. "Michael." My voice trembled, but I needed to know. "At any point during these 14 months, did you stop to think about me? When you saw me getting thinner and thinner, weaker and weaker, when you sold your father's sofa, when you denied me money for medicine, did you ever think, this is wrong?" My son couldn't hold my gaze. Jessica said it was temporary, that soon everything would be fine. "Jessica said," I repeated, "Michael, you are my son. You've known me since the day you were born. I carried you in my arms. I fed you when you were hungry. I took care of you when you were sick. And you couldn't see that I was hungry? That I was sick?" Tears began to roll down Michael's face. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "You're sorry?" My voice raised despite my weakness. "Sorry you got caught, or sorry you did this to me?" Michael fell to his knees beside my bed. "Sorry I failed you. Sorry I hurt you. I didn't want to. Things got out of control. Every time I wanted to stop, Jessica said just one more month, just a little more money, and then we could pay you back everything with interest." I turned to Jessica. "And your boutique? Is it working? Is it generating those profits you were going to use to pay me back?" Jessica shook her head between sobs. "It went bankrupt 2 months ago. It didn't work. I lost everything." The silence that followed was absolute. Robert was the one who spoke. "So, not only did you steal $93,000 from my sister, you lost it. All that money, all that suffering, for nothing." Henry closed his notebook with a dry snap. "Right. Now that we have all the information, these are the next steps. Michael and Jessica are going to sign an agreement acknowledging the debt of $93,000 to Margaret. They will establish a payment plan that will be legally supervised. Furthermore, you are going to vacate this house immediately." "Immediately?" Michael asked with a high voice. "Where are we going to go?" "That is not my problem," Henry replied coldly. "You should have thought of that before robbing your mother. You have 2 hours to pack your personal things and leave the property. If you do not do so voluntarily, I will call the police and have you removed by force." Michael looked at Robert pleadingly. "Uncle, please, we're family." Robert looked at him with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't anger. It was deep disappointment, sadness, and something that looked like pity. "Family doesn't do this, Michael. What you did has no name." Michael tried to approach me, but Robert stepped between us. "No," my brother said firmly. "You've done enough damage." My son stopped with hands outstretched toward me, a gesture of supplication. "Mom, please, forgive me. I love you. I know I made a terrible mistake, but I'm still your son. You can't leave me on the street." His words should have moved me. For 69 years, Michael had been my reason for living. But as I looked at him standing there, crying and begging, I felt something I never thought I would feel for my own son. Nothing. The love I had felt for him all my life had evaporated, consumed by months of hunger, humiliation, and betrayal. "You left me to starve in my own house," I said with a broken but steady voice. "I didn't leave you on the street. I gave you a roof, food, all my money, and you decided my life was worth less than a clothing store." "Mom, I can fix it," Michael insisted desperately. "I'll get a job. I'll pay back every cent. Just give me a chance." "A chance?" I repeated with a bitter laugh. "I gave you 14 months of chances. Every day I woke up hungry. Every night I shivered from cold because you sold my blankets. Every time I asked you for something and you denied it, those were chances for you to do the right thing. And you never did." Jessica approached too, falling to her knees in front of me. "Mrs. Sullivan, I know what we did was wrong, terribly wrong. But please don't leave us with nothing. Michael won't survive on the street. He is your only son, your only family." "I am her family," Robert intervened with a hard voice. "I am the one who came to save her when her only son was killing her slowly." He turned to Jessica with contempt. "And you have no right to ask for anything. You orchestrated all of this. You convinced Michael to steal from his own mother to fund your business fantasies." "It's not true," Jessica protested weakly. "Michael wanted the business too. He agreed to everything." Michael looked at her with an expression of betrayal. "What? No. You were the one who insisted on using Mom's money. You said it was just a loan, that she would never know because we were going to pay it back before she noticed." "You never stopped me," Jessica screamed, standing up. "You spent that money too. You bought expensive clothes and dined at luxury restaurants while your mother starved." And there it was, the ugly, naked truth. They were blaming each other, destroying their own marriage right before my eyes. Part of me should have felt satisfied seeing their relationship crumble, but I only felt a deep, painful emptiness. This was my son, the baby I had held, the boy who told me I was the best mom in the world. When had he become this stranger capable of such cruel crimes? Henry slammed his fist on the table, silencing the argument. "Enough. I don't care whose idea it was, or who is more guilty. You are both equally liable under the law. Now, you are going to sign these documents, or I am calling the police. Decide." He placed several papers on the only table left in the room. Michael and Jessica approached slowly, reading the documents with defeated expressions. "This says we have to pay $1,500 a month until the debt is fully covered," Michael read with a shaking voice. "That's more than 5 years of payments." "You should consider yourself lucky," Henry replied without sympathy. "The alternative is jail. And believe me, you won't be able to pay a cent from there." "But I don't have a job," Michael protested. "How am I going to pay $1,500 a month without a job?" "That is your problem, not mine," Henry said. "Get a job. 2 jobs if necessary. 3, I don't care. But you are going to pay back every penny you stole from your mother." Jessica took the pen with a trembling hand. "And if we miss a month? What happens then?" "Then the agreement is automatically voided, and I proceed with criminal charges," Henry explained. "This document is your only chance to avoid prison. I suggest you take it seriously." I watched as Jessica and Michael exchanged looks of despair. Finally, both signed the documents. Henry reviewed them carefully. "Good," he said, packing the documents away. "Now, per the terms you just signed, you have 2 hours to vacate this property. You may take only your personal belongings. Nothing that belongs to Margaret. None of the furniture, even if it's just 3 chairs and a table. None of the appliances, only your clothes and personal items." Michael looked around the nearly empty house with a lost expression. "You can stay with friends, family, find a shelter, rent something." "It's not my problem," Robert replied. "You should have thought of that before." Jessica started walking toward her room, sobbing. Michael followed her with slow, defeated steps. While they packed, I heard their voices arguing in the room, blaming each other, crying. Part of me wanted to feel pity. But every time that feeling started to surface, I remembered the nights of hunger, the dizziness, the humiliation of having to beg for $20. I remembered seeing them eat while my stomach growled. I remembered every little cruelty. No, I didn't feel pity. I felt justice. Robert sat next to me and took my hand. "Sis, when they leave, I'm taking you straight to the hospital. Dr. Evans says you need at least a week of hospitalization to stabilize." "I don't want to stay here afterward," I whispered. "This house has too many bad memories now." "I know," Robert replied softly. "That's why, when you get out of the hospital, you're coming to live with me in Chicago, at least temporarily, until you recover completely. Afterward, if you want to come back, we'll renovate your house, fill it with life again. But first, you need to heal." Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Thank you, Rob. If you hadn't come—" "Don't say it," he interrupted me. "I will always be here for you. You're my sister. I should have come sooner. I feel guilty for not realizing what was happening." "It's not your fault," I said, squeezing his hand. They were very careful. They isolated me completely. Henry, who had been reviewing more documents, looked up. "Margaret, there is something else I need to tell you. When I reviewed the transfers in more detail, I found something concerning. There are several documents that were digitally signed in your name. Authorizations for large transfers, changes in insurance beneficiaries, a power of attorney." My heart stopped. Power of attorney. "I never signed a power of attorney." "I know," Henry said gravely. "That's why I'm going to need you to file a formal complaint for forgery. Michael forged your signature on several important legal documents. That is an additional felony, much more serious than financial abuse." "What documents?" I asked, feeling nauseous. "A power of attorney giving Michael total control over all your accounts and financial decisions. A change in your life insurance policy, making Michael and Jessica the sole beneficiaries instead of the distribution you had previously between Michael, Robert, and Charity. And an authorization to sell this house if necessary." The words hit me like hammers. They were going to sell my house. Henry nodded. "There was a preliminary listing with a real estate agency dated 3 weeks ago. They were preparing the ground to sell it. Probably going to tell you it was necessary for some invented medical or financial emergency." I felt like the whole world was crumbling around me. Not only had they robbed me, not only had they starved me, they had planned to take everything: my home, my life insurance, my complete autonomy. They would have left me literally with nothing. "And how much would they have gotten for the house?" Robert asked, voice shaking with fury. "According to the preliminary appraisal, approximately $250,000, Henry replied. Robert stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. "Michael!" he shouted, heading toward the room where my son was packing. Henry and I followed, me leaning on the walls because my legs could barely support me. Robert threw the door open and found Michael folding clothes into a suitcase. "You were going to sell your mother's house," Robert roared. "You were going to leave her literally on the street." Michael paled. We were just exploring options. We never would have done it without her permission." "Liar!" Robert yelled. "You forged her signature on legal documents. You changed her life insurance, all without her knowledge." Michael began to cry again, tears of panic. "Uncle, please. I was desperate. Jessica said we needed more capital to save the business. I thought if we sold the house we could buy Mom something smaller and use the difference to invest. She was going to be better off." "I swear." "Better off?" I repeated. "Better off without a roof? Without the house your father and I bought with so much sacrifice?" I approached Michael, every step a monumental effort. "Look what you did to me," I said, pointing at my wasted body. "This is what better off looks like under your care. I weighed 132 pounds when you moved in. Now I weigh 92. You took 40 pounds from me. My strength, my dignity, and you still plan to take more." Michael fell to his knees in front of me. "Mom, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I lost my way. Please, give me another chance. I can change." I looked at him for a long moment. I saw the broken man in front of me, but I also saw the child he had been. And in that instant, I made the hardest decision of my life. "No," I said firmly. "I am not giving you another chance. Not because I don't love you, Michael, but precisely because I love myself. And for the first time in my life, I am choosing me. Mom, please. No, it's over. You signed the documents. You will pay your debt. And after that, I don't want to see you again." "Never? You never want to see me again?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe someday. But right now, every time I look at you, I see the hunger. I see the lies. I can't have that in my life." Robert approached and put his hand on my shoulder. "Sis, we have to go to the hospital." I nodded. I turned one last time to Michael and Jessica. "You have an hour left. When I come back, I don't want to find a trace of you here." I didn't look back as Robert wheeled me out. I spent 9 days in the hospital. I had critical anemia and kidney strain, but I survived. Robert was there every day. Stella visited, crying and apologizing, but I told her it wasn't her fault. Henry handled the legalities. He filed charges for forgery and reclaimed control of my assets. "We might recover about $20,000 or $30,000 from the bank due to the fraud," he told me. "The rest is gone." While I was hospitalized, Robert hired a cleaning crew for my house and bought basic furniture so I wouldn't return to an empty shell. But I knew I couldn't stay. I decided to sell the house and move to Chicago with Robert. 3 months later, settled in Robert's guest room in Chicago, I got news. My house sold for $230,000. With that and my reclaimed pension, I was secure. Michael and Jessica made their first $1,500 payment just 1 day before the deadline. It will take them 6 years to pay it off, Henry told me, and if they miss one, they go to jail. I started rebuilding my life. I joined a book club, started therapy, and slowly regained my health. I'm back to a healthy weight, and I'm learning to smile again. A year after the rescue, sitting on Robert's balcony watching a Chicago sunrise, my phone buzzed. A message from Henry. Michael made the 12th payment. Total paid $18,000. Balance remaining $75,000. There was a note. Michael asks if he can write you a letter. He says he is in therapy and wants to apologize properly. I thought about it. Finally, I replied, "He can send the letter. I will read it when I'm ready." And I meant it. Maybe someday. But not today. Today, I was watching the sunrise, drinking hot chocolate with my brother, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Free.